Okay, hello Jen. Nice to meet you. Thanks for coming in. This is our first meeting today, so we're going to just have a chat. I'll get to know you. We'll figure out, what it is you need help with, and we can make a plan at that point moving forward. How does that sound?
Sounds great.
Okay, good. So, what brought you in today?
I've been having some conflict with my husband, in particular over our kids and the amount of screen time that they're watching. And so I thought it would be useful to come and talk with a counselor about that issue.
So you're having some conflicts about parenting with the use of screens with your children?
Yeah.
Okay, so what is it exactly, or can you tell me some more about that?
Yeah, I can. So my husband and I have different ideas about the amount of screen time that the kids should be watching. But just to tell you a little bit about the scenario with the kids, so they both are 11 now, and they have their own laptops, and so they have the ability to, watch some shows, and we want them to have some screen time every day. I think that's not a bad thing necessarily, but putting some limits on it and what type of limit should be on it is really been challenging for us to figure out, both for their sake and then also between us. When I say between us, like between my husband and I.
Okay, so they both girls have screens, their own screens. They're 11. They are allowed, you and your husband allow them to have some time, and now you are wondering about limiting that time and having some more structure around that time.
Exactly. The only part I would add is also that there's some conflict between my husband and I around this issue in terms of, like, we have different ideas around what would be an acceptable amount of time per day for the kids to be on their computer, laptop, screen, whatever.
Okay. Can you tell me more about your husband's views on screen time?
So his view is that the kids should have a really short period of time, so no more than, say, half an hour a day. And he feels like the kids are at a stage where they should be able to monitor for themselves their screen time entirely. And so he gets quite frustrated with them when they don't sort of self-manage.
Okay. And what about yourself? What are your views on screen time?
My view is that I'd like to see there be some give and take. I think it's important that the kids get a chance to use their laptops in ways that are constructive. So while I agree with him that it's probably useful to limit kind of the amount of, I'll say, like, movie watching or game playing time, I don't want to sort of take away the opportunity for them to learn on the internet, to use some of the programs that they have through school to practice skills like math, to do like some reading or research. And so I feel like we have to be a little bit flexible and maybe not quite so rigid about it. And I would say, just in general, I'm not sure yet that I agree with his perspective that they can self-manage. I feel like they might still be at an age where that might be asking a lot of an 11-year-old. I'm not sure, but I have some hesitation about it.
So your husband would like to see them self-manage more, and kind of shut it off on their own about half an hour into their screen time. And then you would like to see more, or you're open to them having a little bit more screen time, but having it more educational. So maybe having some time to watch a show, and then having some more time to do some math skills or reading skills or any of that type of thing. And then you're also wondering about their ability to be able to self-monitor. I, as a former teacher and then a parent myself, I actually would have to agree with you on that. I think even for myself, I find it hard to monitor screen time. You kind of get lost in your show and that type of thing. So I think that's an interesting thought for kids that age and for all of us really with screens. And it sounds like you really value the educational aspect of screens. Have you and your husband talked about those differences together? And can you tell me a little bit about that if you have?
Sure, I'm happy to share. So we have had some discussion about it, I would say. Maybe not like a true kind of sit down and talk thoroughly about that issue, but we have sort of dialogue around it at the points at which we disagree about it. So where it becomes an issue, then we're sort of having a quick conversation. As you can appreciate, it's a busy household, so there's lots going on at any given time, and we so far haven't like actually, had a really rigorous or meaningful discussion about it. We're just kind of catching each other as we go, making up the rules, which is really what parents do most of the time, I think.
So I'm just going to summarize here what we've talked about so far. You'd like to figure out with your husband some strategies around screen time. You would like it to be a little bit more structured in terms of what they do on the screen, having some fun downtime with the TV, whatever, and then some more educational. Your husband is not too sure, and there's some conflict about that. I'd like to transition, if you don't mind, into talking about maybe some strategies that you can come up with to figure out how to, for you and your husband to be on the same page as parents, so that you can best help your kids with this. Does that sound okay?
Yeah, that sounds great.
Okay. Now, I imagine you've probably thought already of some ideas in terms of trying to, some solutions to this. Do you have any that you'd like to share or kind of flesh out?
Sure. And just as we're talking, obviously, your question prompted me to think about have we had a conversation about this kind of more specifically or more deliberately, and we haven't really. So that stands out as like an obvious maybe starting point for us. And as I think about you actually kind of disclosing the fact you are a teacher, it also makes me think that there's an opportunity to ask other people, right, that have some experience or expertise with kids, like their teachers or, yourself or others that could lend some perspective to this, because I think we are making some judgments or assessments about like their capability to shut down their screen time, for example, based only on our experience of 11-year-olds, and there are people in your position that would have a perspective that's much greater than that when you've got a class of 30 11-year-olds, and then you know sort of what their capabilities generally are and aren't.
Yep.
So that's two, I guess. I can see talking with him, talking with others. I'll try and come up with a third one here just to I guess
what about, could I offer a suggestion?
Yeah.
What about talking with your girls?
I was just actually so funny because I was just going to say that too. I agree.
Yeah.
It would be good to talk to them about it as well. Yeah.
And even they're old enough where you could even share. You could say, this is something that your dad and I really struggle with because we want what's best for you, and we don't want you, just like we don't come home after work and sit on a screen for hours and get lost in that time. We want you to have a little bit of time with it, but maybe we can try and come up, maybe you and the girls and your husband could come up with some strategies on how to do it together.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think that's a good sort of another good way to kind of go about it. We have had some discussion with them for sure, and they do things like right now they have a watch, and so they'll set their timer on their watch, but quite often they've got their headphones on their laptop, they miss hearing their watch, and so it's not really like some of the things that we talked about aren't really working for them or for us, so there's definitely an opportunity to sit down with them and kind of like renegotiate or discuss again some of those things for sure.
And sometimes life happens too, right? Like you're cooking dinner and they're still on and everybody forgets.
Yeah.
Right. Okay, so we've come up with, or you've come up with 3 different options. So one option would be to talk to Carl and try and level with him and get on the same page with him in terms of, maybe combining some TV time with some game time or educational game time. That could be one solution. Another solution you mentioned was talking to
just other experts,
that's
teachers.
Right. Teachers, yeah, that's a great idea. talking to their teachers, and even other parents in the community, and see what ideas they have. Teachers are always really good resources, because often even they might have kids and they might have some ideas of what they do. And then the third solution that you thought of was to have kind of a family meeting and rehash. It already sounds like you have come up with some strategies, and maybe even just kind of touch base as a family and just say, you know, we kind of slid off and we need to kind of get back on and think of some different ideas.
Yeah, that is really resonant with me as you repeat it back, like just the opportunity for us to sit down again and just discuss it as a family is kind of what jumps out to me as probably a starting point, perhaps.
Yeah. No, I think that's a great starting point for you and your family. So I'm just going to quickly summarize, just so you can hear everything, and then we'll make a plan for moving forward. You and your husband, or you have come in because you wanted to discuss that, you know, how you felt about you and your husband being on different pages with technology with your kids at home. Your husband and you have different ideas of what's acceptable and with your 11-year-old girls. You've already tried a few things and that's not working, so you'd like to discuss some options. You came up with 3 really great solutions. The first one, talking to your husband, leveling with him. The second one, talking with your girls as teachers, and getting some strategies from your teachers, and then the third is to have a family meeting and talk with everybody in the family. I'm really looking forward to talking with you next time and see how that goes, and see what things you came up with as a family, and how that worked, and give that a try for maybe a week, and we can see if we can get everybody on the same page as a family. And I think they're really great skills too in teaching our kids how to be responsible and to advocate for themselves, and realize, you know, kind of even our sense of time, and realize, you know, we do kind of sometimes TV just sucks us in, and even as adults we get sucked into that TV time. And,
so true.
And just getting them to be aware and cognizant. I think you guys can learn a lot from that. So I look forward to seeing you next week.
Sounds good. Thank you so much for this.
Thanks.